I'm Shuna and I'm studying finance.
I'm Tanya and I'm studying statistics. I'm Hallie and I'm studying industrial engineering.
I'm Hank. I'm studying drones and aeronautical engineering and technology.
I'm Casey. I'm studying biomedical engineering and linguistics.
Eli. I'm studying construction management.
I'm Charles. I'm learning computer science.
I'm Abhinav and I'm studying neuroscience.
And you're Dave.
Oh,
And you studied.
I studied agricultural economics, graduated in '88.
And I'm Julie, and I studied accounting, so
But not here,
my finance.
but not here.
It's not here though. I didn't go to Purdue. I felt like I've spent enough to have a degree from Purdue here.
Out of state and two of them.
Yes, 2 of them out of state for 1 semester. And then we moved back, and it was still expensive, but it's fine. So anyway, well, welcome everyone. Minnie had a very kind introduction for us. I don't know what great wisdom we have other than we learned a lot about relationships
The hard way.
from the School of Hard Knocks, which is called Experiencing It Yourself. It is painful and expensive. So hopefully we can pass on some wisdom to you guys. Answer any questions you have. We will talk. Feel free to interrupt at any time.
Please.
Because if we hit a point that you want to expand on, this is really for you. It's your exit strategy. So if we leave tonight and we've gone through every one of these pages, we didn't accomplish our goal for tonight, which is to come here and answer questions that you might have, or maybe speak into something you've got questions about.
So, I'll give you a little bit of our background as far as our relationship. We met at work. Worked for the same company. She was in the regional office. I was at a location of a fertilizer company. I sold crop inputs to farmers. And she was on one side of the state of Michigan. I was on the other side of the state. So we were 3+ hours apart. And I was, that was in '92. So I was 26 when we met, 27 when we started dating. How old were you? I know it's wrong to ask a woman, but I'm asking anyway.
I think
so.
I was 23 when we met,
Yeah.
and I was 20.
You were 23 when we started dating.
23 when we started dating.
So, and we dated long distance. Bless you. We dated long distance. So there was a lot of, I would get freaked out when my phone bill, this was when there were no mobile phones, so you were on a landline.
And you still had to pay for long distance.
And you had to pay for long distance. So I grew up southeast of Indianapolis. I'm now living in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I would freak out if my phone bill got over like $60 to $70, right? And then she came along. And it went to 200. Oh crap. So, so there was a lot of talking, a lot of, just getting to know each other. Ended up, that was probably a very good thing because we had to learn how to talk to each other. A lot of trips back and forth across the state. If you know Michigan, she was up toward the thumb of Michigan, right here. Yes, people in Michigan do this. In Indiana, I thought this was the stupidest thing until I moved there. But yes, she lived there, I lived down here, 3 hours away. And we dated for quite a while and then decided we probably ought to be on the same side of the state. So she quit her job, came over to the west side of the state, got a job, we got engaged, which that's a whole different story unto itself. If you want to know that backstory, it's quite comical, I think. But, and then we got engaged and got married and we moved. Well, we were homeless on our honeymoon.
Yeah.
We left for our honeymoon, the moving company came to our house. My former boss let the moving truck, movers into the house that I was living in. They moved it out and then we met the movers at the end of our honeymoon. Into a new house, a new job, and a new area. So,
And newly married.
and newly married. So, 3 of the, 5 most stressful things in your life, all happening at once. But the biggest thing was, I had gotten to the point, like I said, I was 27 years old. I had almost resigned myself that I was going to be single. Dating was not fun then. I'd hate to think what it's like for you guys now, or what you will see when you get out of school. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But knowing what your expectations are of dating, relationships, and everything become very important as you get out into the real world.
And it's also important that you think about not just your dating relationship, but every relationship that you have. So we came from very different backgrounds. Dave was raised in a Christian home with Christian parents, and I was raised in a home that did Christmas and Easter. Was not necessarily supportive of going to church growing up. But, my grandparents went to church, and I went to church with my grandparents. And so it was there was a lot of animosity, I would say, between my parents, my siblings, my extended family, because I wanted to go to church. So, as a teenager, it was an act of rebellion because going to church didn't make my parents happy. So I started off going to church just because it didn't make my parents happy. God can use anything. God is proof that you can find a relationship with Him even when you're running away from something else. So, but that had a lot of impact on our relationship in our marriage, because we're newly married, and now all of a sudden, yes, we were going to church, but the way we approached everything was different. The way we approached finances, the way we approached conflict, because you will have conflict in a relationship, friendship, on the job, with your family, with your spouse, with your children,
With your friends.
It's going to happen. So how you deal with that is all impacted by the relationships that you've had up to this point. So don't think that how you were raised, or I'm not going to be that way, because everybody says I'm not going to be like my parents, until you are.
Until the one day you look in the mirror and go, oh my gosh.
I just said that. I was never going to say that. I hated it when my parents said that to me. It's not an excuse. You can change it. The way that my family dealt with conflict was very different than the way Dave's family dealt with conflict. I will say that the way each family dealt with conflict had its own aspect of unhealthiness to it. And so there was a lot of things that needed to be overcome. And they were, with a lot of hard work, a lot of prayer, and a lot of self-reflection, to just say, you know what, today I'm making a decision that I'm not going to be this way anymore. And you pray, you ask people to hold you accountable, and you can get past that. So don't use it as an excuse that my family's this way, I'm going to be this way my entire life. I'm this way because they were that way. This is the way I was raised. No.
It's just the way it is.
It's not. You can find a way to the other side of that.
And I think you're going to find too, as we talk about our parents, and I grew up in a family of 6 boys, mom and dad, so there was 8 of us. Christian home, mom and dad were leaders in the church, so church doors were open, and even in a small country church, guess what? We were in church. Sunday morning, Sunday night, midweek, every revival, every event, we were there, period. And they weren't even pastors. But I think the thing you also have to start looking at as you're getting ready to go out into the working world, non-school world, your relationship with your parents is going to change. It needs to change. Because, yes, they are still your parents, and there is always going to be some aspect of them being your parents and them taking care of you. Proof positive. We went to a wedding this last weekend, and our Rachel went with us. And you know what? My kids don't pay for anything when they're with me. I paid for her ticket. I paid for all the meals. That's the way it is. And it's not because I don't think they can do it. They all have good jobs. But they're my kids. But the relationship changes because now they're not children. They're adults. And we have a son that's in Ball State, so there's 3 of them. But he graduates this December. The relationship changes. Now, while I'm still their parent, it becomes more of a mentoring rather than a father-child relationship. And they should expect that from us as well. I can't treat them like a child, and they shouldn't let me treat them like a child. Now, sometimes that transition's easier than others, and you have to navigate those waters very carefully. But it's something that you're going to have to look at, and something you will have to deal with, because you can't be the child all the time. You're going to be an adult. You're going to have your own job. You need to start turning it into a mentorship. I'm not going to say it's a friendship. I'm not my kid's friend. I'm still their father. But I can't treat them like a child anymore. Questions on that? That's a sticky subject right there. Can't be that easy. We didn't explain it that well.
So it's kind of like more you just putting yourself out there to be available for them if they need help. You're not like babying them, micro.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And you're gonna find, so everybody in this room is a senior, correct? Okay, so I don't know where you are in your whole job search, moving on from college, when you're gonna graduate. I'm not gonna get into all of that. If you would like to at some point in time, I'm happy to listen. But you're going to graduate from college, and when you graduate from college, you're gonna cease living here. So where are you gonna live? What are you gonna do? Do you have a job? If you don't have a job yet, it's not mission critical, but you are going to have to find one, because you're going to have to find a way to support yourself. And if you can't find a job and you can't support yourself, then what's your next step? What are you going to do? And these are things that are going to impact your relationship with your parents, because I can tell you that every parent wants their kid to go to college for one reason. Do you know what that reason is? Here's your pop quiz. What? Get a good job. Why do they want you to get a good job?
They want you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet.
And they want you to be taken care of.
And what else? Speaking as a father,
Yes.
get out of the house.
On the payroll.
Yes, that's what I've been saying. Hey, I've got 3 months. 3 months, and the last one's off
3
the
months.
payroll.
That's it. And we're empty nesters. Can I tell you that you all are great, and if you all were my kids, I'd be very proud. I would love you. I would take care of you, but I do not want you to come home. I like empty nesting. I like not having any kids at home. You can come visit anytime, stay for a couple days, then go. Okay.
We were not
Back
happy.
to wherever you were.
We were not happy with COVID
No,
at all.
They all had to
Because 2 of them had to come back to the house.
come. We didn't have enough space
And
for all those people.
we weren't ready for them. It was like 3 months early. They weren't supposed to come home yet.
So,
So all of a sudden now we had to navigate. But and we say that jokingly, but at the same time we're serious. The expectation is for them to get a job and move away.
and let's be serious. I mean, let's be honest. Or here's a polling question for the room. How many of you guys want to graduate from college and move back in with your parents and live in the bedroom that you were in high school?
Anybody?
Which perhaps could be with a sibling.
Anybody? Anybody?
Nobody, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So you both have the same goal. How you get there, you know.
And the relationship of how you do it becomes very important.
So, like, for y'all from the parent side, you're kind of like, get out. But how was your experience with your parents? Like, did you have any of the, like, I know my parents moved to Alabama 2 summers ago now, but my mom had a really hard time with, like, she wished I was already out of college before that had happened. And she, like, in all honesty, is not in the stage yet of, she enjoys her house, she enjoys where they're at, but she's still like, I miss my kids when they were little and all this stuff. And so I'm kind of on the end of, like, tugging at the reins a little bit of, like, here we go. So
Right.
how was that experience for you guys?
So when Rachel left, she came here to Purdue, and we lived in Virginia. And I know there's no geography majors in here, and that's not my strong suit, but I can tell you it's hours away, okay?
You know.
Yes.
And add another 3 hours to where you went.
Yes.
So,
It is a long, long car drive and a very expensive plane or flight, okay? So when she came here, we were a little
the same way.
same way. Like, she's going there, and you know, we're not there. What happens if she comes down with strep in the middle of the night and has to go to the ER? What happens if she runs out of money, you know, for something, or something happens, or she gets hurt, or you know, it is what every parent thinks of. Okay, it's not because we didn't think she was capable at all. It was because she's our child.
And she was the first.
And she was the first. So letting her go to college was difficult. I will say that. So if you are a firstborn, I am a firstborn, I completely can relate to both sides. When I went to college and my parents let me, you know, drop me off at college, it was difficult for me because I didn't have anything to draw from. I was the first one of my siblings to go to college. So I didn't have an older sister or brother that I could draw from and say, okay, so how do you navigate this? And how do you deal with that? I had to plow the road, right? When Rachel went to school, it was the first one that went, and so it was difficult. But we learned, and we learned that we wanted her to launch well, okay? And launching well means prepare her as much as we could. So we did take some measures to make sure there was a way, since we were so far away, that we could get money to her, you know? And you had to let her do things. She would call in and say, you know, hey, for instance, here's a great story you guys will love. She calls me in Virginia and she says, so I met these people who've been here for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I met these people and they want to go on this car trip up to Lake Michigan. Now I know where this is because, you know, we're from this area, right? So I know what she's talking about, and I'm like, okay, well, Lake Michigan's what, like 2-3 hours away, you know? And I said, really? And I said, well, who are they? And she goes, well, it's all kind. There's upperclassmen, and there's freshmen, and there's seniors, and there's, you know, and there's guys and girls and everything. And I said, well, is this like a group thing or what? And she goes, it's just a bunch of people that are getting together to go. Okay. So as a mother, I think, how many years did I spend telling my daughter, don't get in a car with a stranger and let them take you anywhere, right?
Let alone to Lake Michigan.
Because Lake Michigan, if you guys didn't know, again, you're not geography majors, is close to Chicago, where everybody gets murdered and dumped in the beach. So, I'm like, well, you know how to be safe. We've taught you these things. You know, make sure that your cell phone is completely charged. Make sure that you have some cash. So if they drop you off and leave you, that you have a way to get back, you know, to college and all these other things. So, you know, we just kind of talked through some like safety things, but it really did take a lot for me to just say, I gotta let her go. So
She ended up going with these freaks from this place called NCM.
yes,
And
which is now called
Launch.
So she was probably in the safest place she could have ever been.
Well,
at
except for
that
with the
time.
backs, but that's
Yeah,
neither here nor there.
But it was the idea that you have to be able to let her go. Now, I don't know where you are in your relationship with your parents, but if your parents are saying, oh, you can't do that because something might happen to you, guess what? Life is going to happen to you. There's going to be things that are going to happen that are not going to be wonderful, that are not always going to be good, but they have to give you the opportunity to stand on your own 2 feet. So your parents at this point need to move into this. How do we tell you? How do we help you to go into something knowing the most that you could know? How do we prepare you for a situation? Fast forward a little bit, when Rachel and Laura graduated from college, both of them got a job offer before they graduated, which was very exciting for us and for them. And they asked me for some help because part of my job has always been to evaluate health insurance plans and 401k plans, which you guys know nothing about yet, but you will very shortly find out about. So they would ask me about them. My job as their parent is not to say, you have to pick this plan. My job as their parent is to say, this is what this plan is, and here's the plus and minus of this. This is what this plan is, and this is the plus and minus of that. And help them be able to make an informed decision. If your parents cannot be objective like that, then don't ask them that question. Do you understand what I'm saying?
But also understand that if you can't ask your parents something like that, find somebody you can ask. Get help. This is not something you should have to do by yourself. Find someone to talk to. I mean, we'll talk to you about it. We're not just here for one night. I mean, I think you guys have seen us here before.
Yeah.
Once or twice at least. But understand that life is a team sport. Don't think you have to do it by yourself.
So, anybody ever had a group project in their entire school career? Sure.
One or two,
You all
maybe.
had one or two, maybe. What you're gonna find out in life is so much better as a group project. How many have had a bad experience with a group project? Yeah, you got that one person that doesn't show up to any of the meetings, doesn't do any of the work, just there to get the grade.
See, you guys have the ability to grade your teammates. Ours was just, here's the grade and everybody gets it and you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So there was no accountability to
Right.
it. So
When you graduate, the cool thing is you get to choose who gets to be on your team project called what. So whatever project you have, if it is reading an offer letter from for a job, buying a car,
Buying
looking
a
for a
house.
place to live, buying a house, finding an apartment, finding someone that you want to date, or someone that you date for a while and you think you're getting serious about. It can be a team sport in that you can seek out people, and you should seek out people that can give you wise advice. This is not always going to be a peer, because your peers generally only know what you know. Okay, so look for somebody that is a little bit older than you, and someone whose life you want to emulate. Make sense? Any questions on any of that?
So dating. We might as well, you've opened that door, we might as well walk through it, so. Because I think unless anybody else has any questions on parents and relationship with your parents.
This is an ebb and flow every year. 1 year, the entire time is taken up with parents. The next year, nobody has any questions about parents, so.
I'll start out with the story of, I had an extra semester. And so I'm getting near graduation. I'm walking across campus and I run into one of my professors And so I stopped and talked to him, and he was an old coot, pure and simple. Loved the man dearly. He was a great professor. I loved him. And he goes, "So, you're getting ready to graduate, huh?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Did you find yourself a woman?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "Better work on that." He goes, "Opportunity to find them is the best places right here. So you better work fast." Well, obviously I didn't. But understand something very quickly when you look at dating. And it's all relative. Relatively here, it's easy. You have very close age amongst yourselves, right? You're all, I mean, whether it's a freshman to a senior, you're still within 4, 5, 6 years at most, right? All, you know, you may have different majors, but you all have the same objective. Education, graduation, job. Maybe grad school, who knows. But, so think about where you are in the demographic you're in. That changes very quickly. And that was really kind of the point of my professor. Because once you get out into the real world, you're going to be, what, 22, 23, maybe 24-year-old in a work experience, and you're going to be working with 30-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and not have the same experience, have the same objectives, have the same beliefs, none of that. Or it will be a very small percentage that you'll have that. So now, what are you going to do? And I was really surprised about when she said, you know, if you move back home, usually she says, "Okay, so what's your plan?" You have?
I
So the question becomes, and not that you have to go, "Okay, I know I'm going to go to this place." That's not the point. The point is, how are you going to find someone that you want to date? And no, the bar is not a great place to find someone to date. I don't care if it's at school or not at school. It's not a great place to find someone to date. But you have to think about those things. Because how are you going to find somebody that's like-minded? Because I can tell you this much, I went to churches that, before we even knew each other, that the demographic wasn't real great for me to find someone to date. So you may find a church that you're called to be in that may not have somebody that you want to date. I mean, I actually had a father ask me, he told me he wanted me to date his daughter, and I didn't want to date his daughter. So think about these things, because these are the things you're going to have to deal with, even just in the dating scene. What does that look like? And what are going to be your parameters? Because you're going to want to have parameters, and you're going to want to have those already established of expecting when you get into a situation. It's all about managing expectations.
So what are the things that are important to you? And the one thing that you left out of them being here in college, the majority of the people that you come in contact with on a daily basis on a college campus are single. When you get out in the world, that dynamic changes.
Yeah, that's a big one too.
Yes, it is. So what are the things that are important to you? Are they a Christian? Are they employed?
Do they live at home?
Do they live at home with their parents? You know, you guys laugh, but I'm telling you, these were my dating criteria right here. Like, do you have a job? That's the first one. You know, are you living in your parents' basement, or are you still living in the bedroom that you were raised in? Again, another one was, do they have children? And I know that's not something you're thinking about, but when you graduate, the odds are that you'll find someone that might have a child. And you've got to consider, okay, now I'm dating someone that I might become an instant spouse, an instant parent, and I might inherit an ex-spouse. So
And that's very real.
those are
I've
very
lived it.
real things. So just think about what are the things that are important to you. Okay? And it's not necessarily everybody's got to fit into these, okay? I had 5 criteria. You missed on 3.
I had a job.
You were a
Yes.
Christian, you had a job,
I did not
and you
live at
didn't
home.
live at home. So you had 3 of my 5. Okay? So, but
But I was a farmer, I was a coworker, and
You
I
were
was
a
in
Republican.
a Republican, and I
and
was
you
in
were
a fraternity.
So all those were bad.
And 29 plus years later, look at it.
So here we are. But think about that, because the things that you're gonna hold firm to are the things that are also gonna impact your relationship. What are the things that you're willing to give on? Obviously, I was willing to give on somebody that was from out of state, because I didn't wanna have to travel to one family and then the other at every holiday. But guess what? For 29 years, I've been driving from one family to another for every holiday. You know?
So once you get into the relationship, what are your boundaries there? And again, you may not think that's such a big deal, but if you're dealing with those boundaries when you're in amongst it, you're too late. You need to know what those boundaries are for who you're gonna date, but then once you're dating, what are the things that we do and we don't do? You better have those parameters set up beforehand, because once you're in them, they kind of get blurry very quickly. And so make sure you know what that looks like. Make sure you know the things that are okay and the things that no. This is a hard no. Because you need to have that plan laid out so that you can say, no, we're not going to that movie, or we're not going to that establishment. Whatever those things are, let alone between the two of you.
I'm not staying at your house. And you can't stay at home. You have to know what your limitations are. If you don't know what your limitations are, then I would say make them pretty strict, because lines get blurry in the moment. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Questions on that?
Can you give us a few examples of what some of those boundaries may be for her?
So, one of the boundaries could be, or was, that we didn't spend the night together, ever. It wasn't going to work. It was too big of a temptation, so that had to be a boundary. We had accountability to other people, so we allowed other people to be in our life that could ask hard questions and say, how are things going?
And call you out on it if they thought it was wrong.
If they thought that something was going on, they would ask the questions and hold us accountable. Movies were not a temptation for either one of us, so that wasn't a thing, other than we didn't do horror flicks ever, just because that wasn't a thing for either one of us. Okay. We tended not to go to the bar, because now we do imbibe with alcohol from time to time, but we know a limit, right? Okay, so my limit is 1 drink over 1 hour, because then I know I will never get to that point, right? Of being intoxicated. So that was my limit. And
Because that blurs lines very quickly as well.
Exactly. So we tried to do a lot of group dates just because it was easier. So we would go out with other people, whether it would be a double date or a group of us going and we were there.
Those are things you have to really search yourself for, to say, okay, I'm willing to say this is okay, and I'm not willing to say that's okay. And hold true to it. And the thing I will tell you, and in our generation it would be the girl having to say this. I think in your generation it's probably both directions. Saying no and meaning no, and if they can't handle that, then the relationship isn't worth it. Okay? I can't say that hard enough. Because if they don't cherish you enough to hold to your standards, they're not worth your time.
If they can't respect you enough to respect your boundaries. Clear example. So on our first, it wasn't really a date.
Of course, it wasn't really the
I
day.
have rules for dating as well. It wasn't a date. We were together, but it wasn't a date. So we were.
It didn't meet all the criteria,
It didn't
so
meet all the
it isn't
criteria.
official.
It isn't official.
It was
It's-
2 points off.
It was more than 2. For it to qualify for a date, there had to be 3 things. It had to be a call in advance. Okay, he has to pick you up, and he has to spend money. Now, spending money could be just putting gas in his car to go get you. Okay, but he didn't. He missed on all 3, so it wasn't a date.
It wasn't my event to begin with. It's a
He
whole
was
long
just-
story, I'll tell you
He
later.
was just asked along,
Yeah,
which he did for a friend because he was helping him out.
yeah.
But he got to meet me again.
Exactly.
So that was going to be the thing.
Anyway,
We were sitting at the table, and it was he and his friend, and me and my friend. And the 4 of us are sitting there talking, and Frank said, Julie, he goes, what's your stance on a first kiss? Like, if you go out, like, don't you think if I bought dinner, I would be entitled to a kiss? And I said, no. If you expect a kiss on the first date, it will be the last one you ever get. Okay? Sounds old-fashioned, but that was my stance. Okay? So, we were dancing, and he said to me that he wanted to kiss me, but he knew that if he kissed me, it would be the last time he ever saw me. That group got big points for me because all of a sudden I realized I drew a line, and he respected the fact that I drew the line, even though it was one that really wasn't a hard line for him. So that endeared him to me a lot because he respected the fact that that was my stance.
and that was 31 years ago.
That was 31 years ago.
So again, I can't say it enough that if they cannot respect your boundaries, they're not worth your time. It's time to go. I say, and now I don't say that as someone that experienced it. I say that as a dad, and I would back man or woman against that.
The other thing is, what are the things that you hold dear? So what are the things that are important to you? Is Christmas important and they don't care? It might seem trivial, but do you really want to have that fight for 31 years? Do you want to raise your kids in a home where Christmas is not important? If it's something that was important to you. And Christmas is just one topic. There are several other that are much larger.
we
for one
went,
of those things.
we went through a training that also had, it was a segment on marriage itself. They had a premarital segment as well. That was 2 years. Every week for 2 years. And it dealt with everything about what marriage was going to look like too. Where are you spending Christmas? Where are you spending Thanksgiving? What about, you know, every aspect of it.
Are you gonna celebrate Halloween? And there's no real right or wrong answer, it's just what is important to you.
Any other questions to them? Because we need to go to the other end of the spectrum. Because I don't know what kind of time we're looking at.
Besides,
15 minutes.
Okay.
besides Christmas, what are some of those other like big topic things? So do you want to have that fight for 21 years kind of things?
How do you spend money?
What's a limit on what you can spend without having to ask the other person?
Because you want to talk about a big topic, try a joint checking account. Okay? We were both working. We were dinks, double income, no kids. So got a lot of money going into a checking account, right? And now all of a sudden it's like, woohoo! I
No
need some
worries.
new shoes. How about I'm not going for those Target specials. I like Michael Kors. I'll go for that. What's wrong with buying $200 worth of shoes? Or $500 worth of clothes? Or a new stereo system for your car? You know, whatever it is. Because now all of a sudden you've got money. But there has to be some accountability between the two of you. And that was part of our premarital counseling, which was great, but we did have to sit down and come up with how much can you spend without asking? Not asking permission, but just letting them know, because when it comes down to it, that joint checking account has to pay for your rent or mortgage, it has to pay for groceries, it has to pay the electric bill, it has to pay for insurance, make car payments, make student loan payments if you have those.
All the things.
So when you start to whittle it down, there's only so much left of disposable income that you can throw away on shoes, right? So that was a big topic. How many kids are you gonna have?
And how are you going to raise them?
And is somebody gonna stay home with them, or are you both gonna work?
If you're both going to work, who's going to watch them?
How are you gonna choose a daycare?
Or which grandparent's going to watch them? If you're around both of them.
Where are we gonna live? Are we gonna live in an apartment or a house? What's the goal? Buying a house or traveling? Because sometimes it comes down to that, right? How important is vacation? And what defines vacation? Is vacation a staying at home and doing things that you haven't done in the area that you're living in? Because if you're living in a new area, you can do a lot of exploring right from home, right? Go see things that are around that you haven't done before. We did that here, and we've lived here for 5 years. We found all kinds of things to do.
We really did it in Virginia.
Yeah. So, those types of things. Who are you going to spend your time with? Are you going to spend time with other couples? Or is having one-on-one friendships with you and the girls going out, or you and the guys going out? What are you going to have in your house?
Do you guys advise like a joint checking account or like?
I am a firm believer in a joint checking account. The biggest reason why is because if you have separate checking, it's his money and my money. And that is, to me, one step closer to I can live my own life and you can live your own life. And we never have to live a life together. Okay? Joint checking accounts cause a lot of arguments unless you set parameters ahead of time.
I was in the Army, out in New York, so like almost all of my friends, whether it was their parents or their like wife that they met at a strip club or like where that's a real thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
We know.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, I have one friend that didn't have like a brother, a mom, a spouse, like not stealing money. Almost all my friends had their money stolen, and we would like go on deployment or do whatever. Like, so I guess I'm kind of.
So, that is a different situation, and I will tell you that I only advised one person ever in my life to have a separate checking account, and that was because her husband was an addict, and if they had a joint checking account, all of their money would be gone. And I told her, to protect you and to protect your kids, you need to have a separate checking account that he is a part of. Give him, a stipend. But that's it.
And the thing about it too is that shows, and I'll use you as the example just because of the scenario. That shows why being equally yoked means that much more. Because if you have different belief systems, yeah, he may have gone to the strip club and married the stripper, but there's only one thing that's important to a stripper, and that's money. That's why she does what she does, whether it was voluntary or not. But understand what you're running into and what you're going to have to deal with. And there are times where, like her example, yeah, it's probably a good thing you keep it separate. But if you're going to have a marriage and you become one flesh, money's a part of it. It has to all be one.
Just gonna trust her really well.
I was gonna say, so in the situation that you meet this person that's was an addict, maybe, would you advise to trust them or to protect them, or would you say maybe do it separate for a while, or just a range?
That's not something you can answer just right off the bat here.
So what I would advise you first of all is to be equally yoked. So if you have, my family has had addiction struggles, okay? I would tell you that there are members of my family that have come through that successfully. There are members of my family that have not. The members of my family that have come through successfully have earned trust back, okay? The people that have not, have not. If you are dating someone that is an addict, you better seek a lot of wisdom and a lot of counseling. We go to Calvary Church and they have Celebrate Recovery. Get in a group like that. If you met a stripper well, I understand, but I'm just saying, it was out there, so that's why I'm saying this. But you meet, so you meet someone who maybe has a shady past. Let's look at it that way. Okay, they do some things on the side. Maybe they're gambling, because that seems to be the hot button topic right now. So maybe they like having side bets here and there and everywhere, right? Is that someone that you really want? Is that behavior something that you want for the rest of your life? And that's a hard question to ask, and it's a hard question to answer. But before you think about marrying that person, is that behavior something that you can live with for the rest of your life? I brought up the fact that when I was dating, there were a number of men that I met that had children. And children are wonderful. I have 3 of my own and I love them dearly. But that was one of the things that I had a real hard time with, because by dating that person, you have to accept the fact that now I'm going to be a mother to a child that I didn't bear. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it does bring a level of complexity to a situation that I didn't think that I was ready for. And if I'm not ready to accept that responsibility, then I have absolutely no right to put that on the child that has no choice about coming into that relationship. Understand?
Say on the checking account front, I know this is an anomaly, but my parents have done separate checking accounts for 30 plus years. but it's like they make those financial decisions together. And so even if it's above $50 and it's my mom's checking account, she's still asking my dad about it, and they like divide it up based on incomes, who's paying which bills and that sort of thing. And so it was like,
And we're not saying it can't be successful,
yeah.
but it we've seen it too many times when couples have had his and hers. It also left that divide and always left that easy out that, you know what, I'm tired of this, I'm gone.
Take my money.
And all I have to do is take my account with me and I'm out of here. And so it always leaves that thought of it's an easy exit. And I mean, marriage is a covenant. It's not a contract. See, I did listen on Saturday. And there's a difference. And if you don't know what the difference is, stick around, we can talk about it. But it is a lifelong covenant. And so it's not something that should be easily just gotten out of.
Another factor would be friends. Who are those people's friends? Who is it that they're spending time with? And not that you judge a person, but you can tell a lot by the people that they associate with the most. Not that people can't change, not that people can't improve. But when you're looking, there's a lot of things to consider. If they have that friend that is truly annoying, do you really want to have that person as part of your life, in your wedding pictures, at your child's christening, at every football game in the fall?
And for self-reflection, I always remember a sermon that we at a church we were at in Georgia. For a self-reflection, to get an idea of who you are, think about 4 people that you're friends with. And typically, let's just use intelligence as the barometer, but it's in all aspects of your life. There are always going to be 2 that you're smarter than, but there's always going to be 2 that are smarter than you. You're always in the middle of that. So, not just in intelligence, I just used that as an example, but in your life, there's going to be 2 that are on one side of you, and there's going to be 2 on the other side of you. Where do you fit? And who are you hanging out with? And when you start looking at those people, it's guilt by association in both directions. You can be guilty by associating with people that have ill repute, yeah, that's the word, or that are very reputable. And the more you start moving up into that more reputable, I'm not talking about status, I'm just talking about who you're going to be friends with. As you move up, and all of those people that you're dealing with are going to be people you want to be like. You're gonna gain that in your own personality as well, and that's a good thing. So think about, so and I'll use her as an example. If we were dating still, and I saw 4 of her friends with her, and I looked at that, okay, are the top side really people I think I want to hang out with? And if they aren't, probably ought to rethink it. Does that make sense?
And friendships are another one, because right now, again, you are living an adult life with a safety net, because you're at college, so you're in a bubble where you're with people that are plus or minus no more than 4 years your age, right? All about the same intelligence level, because Purdue is tough to get into. So you're all here, you're all smart. But you're going to get out in the world and you're going to come in contact with people that are not going to have as much intelligence as you. Don't believe it? Wait till you get your first job. Wait till you move into your first apartment. but you're going to be around people that already have differing values. The biggest issue that people struggle with in the world today is loneliness. So you're going to be looking for relationships. You're in a bubble. There's people all your same age, you know, a lot of similarities with people that are around you now.
And these are not relationships.
And I think you guys are intelligent enough to know that social media is not a true relationship. But you think about it, and you're going to get out in the world, and you're going to be hungry for a relationship. And that's why defining what's important to you is so important, because when you get out there and you do get lonely, and you will, sometimes you're desperate. And it isn't, I'm looking for Mr. or Miss Right. I'm willing to sacrifice for Mr. right now or Miss right now because they're there.
And we say this toward dating and that type of relationship. Let's also, and this is the other end of the spectrum I wanted to touch on real quick. It's okay to be single too. There are people that have been called to be single. I always remember going to a conference one time and they were interviewing this woman and she was in her 80s, I believe. And she was single all of her life. And they asked her about it and she said, I was called to be a nurse and I was called to do these things and minister to people. And a marriage relationship was never a part of where I was called to be, because I had a lot of things that I was going to be dealing with that I didn't want to expose. You know, she was dealing with diseases and all of these types of things. She's like, I didn't want to expose a family to that. So don't think that, you know, we're talking about dating and marriage and relationships in that manner. But don't discount that if you're called to be single, there's a lot of what we're talking about still applies to you.
There's a man that we have been tailgating with. We get season tickets to Purdue. We've gotten season tickets to Purdue forever. And Roger has been tailgating with us for about 35 years.
At least, yes.
With Dave's family. And he is a great guy, and he's been single his entire life.
He was an extension agent.
And I was just talking, he retired recently, and I was like, so what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm going on cruises, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. And he truly has had a full life, but he has never gotten married. And that's okay. Dave has a cousin who got married when she was in her 60s, correct, Beth?
Yes.
Yeah. So she was in her 60s when she got married for the first time. So.
We met a lady, she was a minister in the church we were in Virginia, and it came up as a part of a conversation, and she goes, and somebody said, so why didn't you get married? She goes, never found a man that I wanted to spend more time with him than not. I mean, and that's okay. So don't think that the only way you live a full life is if you get married.
I heard this once and I thought it was so wise. Singleness is not a disease. Therefore, it does not need to be cured. So don't let somebody tell you, oh, let me fix you up with somebody. Because being with someone isn't necessarily a cure for all ills. Okay? Sometimes that's just another problem. What was the song? I had 99 problems, but now I don't have you, or whatever. That was a song some time ago. Yeah. There are those too. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Got a question?
Yeah, so talking about problems, you guys mentioned like dealing with conflict. So what are
It's
some,
what?
like dealing with conflict? So
Oh, dealing with conflict.
Yeah, within the marriage, how do you guys, and even outside of marriage, like with friends, or like parents.
Dealing with conflict. So, the first thing is, don't do it when you're angry. If you are angry, you will have a tendency to, or I have a tendency, let me speak for myself. I have a tendency to say things I don't mean that I then am going to regret, okay? Because words are like toothpaste. Once it's out of the tube, can't put it back. So I have a tendency to just stop talking. What that does is it cuts off all communication and it lets him know I'm upset and now he's on pins and needles, which is not fair to him. So how we learn to deal with it, because my first inclination is just to say as many mean things as I can say, which is not right. So how we learned to deal with it was that he will ask me if there's something wrong, and if I tell him no, then he's off the hook. If I tell him, yes, something is wrong, but I don't want to talk about it right now, now the responsibility is on my shoulders. I have to get myself to a place where I can speak calmly and rationally about whatever it is that's affecting me to him. But I have to go back to him to talk about it, especially if it's something that he has done or said that upset me, okay? The more you practice that, the better you get at it. Conflict used to be,
Well, here's something else to look at. You also, one, fight fair.
yes,
Fight fair, because you're gonna fight,
yes.
okay? You will fight, but fight fair. The other thing you have to understand too is understand how each of you fights. One of the worst fights we ever had was before we got married. Now, my family avoids conflict at all costs. You know, it's just everything is wonderful and the undertones are huge. But I also am a salesman. So fighting is never a good thing as a salesman because I will lose every time with the customer, right? Because if I fight back, he's going to get mad, leave. If I don't fight back, then he's just going to run over me. So none of it's good, right? But if, as a salesman, I let my customers yell at me, get it out of their system, and then we deal with it. Okay, you got it out of your system, now what's really wrong, let's go for it. Figure it out, right? She didn't know that. She just saw the we avoid conflict portion of it.
And my family takes conflict head on.
And
You
relish.
and I got a problem,
and
we're
relish
gonna
in it.
talk about it right now.
In raised tones, to be conservative.
Several in close proximity.
Yeah. So she was mad. Don't even remember what it was about, but it was about the wedding and everything. And so she's mad. She is fighting the way that she fights or fought, which was raised tone, close proximity. Sorry, she's pissed off, right? I'm letting her get it out of her system so that then once she gets it out of her system, I can say, okay, now let's deal with it. There was one problem though. She's expecting me to fight back. I don't fight back. And the more I don't fight back, the madder she gets. And the higher the decibels get and the closer she gets.
Because in my mind, him not replying says I don't care and I'm not listening.
It was ugly. It almost cost the wedding. It was that big of a deal. So understand how each of you fights and then be able to come together on, okay, how are we going to fight?
And that's how you establish the rules of fair fighting.
The rules of engagement.
Rules of engagement. It really is rules of engagement, right? So the first rule is the first rule is you have to stay on topic. So whatever the topic is that you're fighting about, it has to stay on that topic. It can't be, I hate those shoes and I don't know why you wear those shoes every time. It's just like your father. Your father used to keep his shoes and he'd keep them for 55 years. Okay, what are we fighting about at this point? Because now he doesn't know, right? Was it his shoes or was it his father? Or was it his father, the fact that his father kept things for 55 years? What was it? Because now we're bouncing all over the place.
Or was it that I didn't, you know, take out the trash for the trash that day? And that was what the original fight was about. I mean, I'm using that as an example. But it started out here.
Right.
You can't let the scope creep go a completely different direction because then it's out of control.
So, your fight to fight fair has to have one topic that we're going to talk about, okay? You might have 16 things that are aggravating you, but you need to deal with them one at a time. So, if it's about the trash, we're talking about the trash, and that's it, until we've resolved the trash.
Then we can deal with the shoes.
Then we can deal with the shoes, or move on to the next one, whatever the next one is that I spent $200 on my shoes.
Exactly.
All right. Since we're over time, those that want to stay and ask more questions can, but we'll go ahead and close out. For those that are new, if you scroll back up at the very beginning of the group me, you will see a Google Doc that you can make a copy of and use as taking notes from the chapters you're reading during class. It also has your homework in it, listed, highlighted in blue. So your homework this week is to read chapters 8 and 9, which goes into great detail about all kinds of relationships, and she talks about the biblical, what does the Bible say about handling these relationships in a godly way. So make sure you read that. And then another part of your homework, if you scroll down at the very bottom of the homework, it says family relationships, and it has a whole bunch of questions for you to analyze. You and God, how does my relationship with my family look? And then it has a list of questions about other relationships in your life. An important thing to remember is how you treat your family and the transition that you make in your 20s is going to highly impact your relationships with your family when you're 30, 40, 50, and you have kids and a husband or wife in the mix. And that goes for all other kinds of relationships. And so analyze that with God, pray about it, see if there's maybe some things that you need to alter or apologize for or talk through with somebody that you have a relationship with. So, and if any prayer requests you guys have, put them in the group meet so we can be praying for each other this week. And I'm just going to ask Dave if you'll close this, and then anybody can stay that wants to ask more questions.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for these students, for their lives, for their service to this ministry, and the opportunity to prepare them for the life after school, the things that they're going to be doing, the places they'll be going, the people they'll be involved with. Father, just guide and direct their steps. Help them to find family, not just blood family, but your family that can support them and guide them and direct them, mentor them, bless them in so many different ways. We thank you for the opportunity to be here. Take us through the rest of the week, guide and direct our steps, that all we say and do will give you glory. And this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
And I'll keep the video rolling for any other questions that want to be answered. So if someone's missed, they can hear it.
Well, and also if there's things that you guys want to ask one-on-one, they know how to get a hold of us.
Yep.
We're more than happy to sit down. Questions? We'll sit here and talk as long as you guys want to.
You're welcome to leave if you need to, or
Yep.
you're welcome to stay.
You're not gonna
Don't
offend
feel
us.
bad, yeah.
Do you advise like some sort of like couples counseling or like before you get married? Or
Yes.
When you find someone?
Yes, I would highly recommend. In fact, I would refuse to get married if the person that I wanted to marry would not go through premarital counseling. Marriage is hard. Marriage is wonderful, but marriage is hard. So don't think, oh, I found somebody, they complete me, my life's gonna be wonderful. That's not how it works. Because what in actuality happens is you get two sinful people that say I do, and and decide to live in really close proximity for the rest of their lives. Okay? So, sin impacts everybody, you and everybody around you. Okay? And we're all sinners, every single one of us. So when I sin, it impacts him. It impacts our kids, our neighbors, the people that I work with, and everything else. So if you don't work out some of those things before you get married, you know, the big things, you know, money, sex, children, housing, you know,
In-laws.
in-laws, holidays, you know, those are just a few of the big topics.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
I would be surprised. I would say there's very few, if any, marriage that has been, you know, any length of time that hasn't gone through very hard times. If you don't prepare for it with premarital counseling, as well as just accountability and peer mentoring along the way, I mean, there was a time that we couldn't stand to be in the same room with each other at all. I mean, she told me that as long as I was traveling for my job, she told me that as long as my paycheck came home, I didn't need to. So anybody that thinks that it's the happily ever after, if you haven't had marital problems, you either haven't been married long enough or you're lying to yourself. You will have problems. Working through them because you had the counseling and because you have that support group we've talked about means everything.
Well, and I also recommend pre-engagement counseling, because usually once a ring gets on the finger, even if it shouldn't, if you shouldn't go ahead and get married, you figure that out. Most people just don't call it off because they're embarrassed. They don't want to, you know, their parents have already spent money on a venue, deposit, and so you really need to know before you put the ring on the finger if this is really the person that I want to marry. And that's something that our staff offers, is pre-engagement and premarital, and even people that have moved far away, like we've done over Zoom and stuff. So it's highly recommended.
And don't get upset. I mean, my mom point blank asked her hard questions before we got married.
Asked you point.
And asked me, yeah. I mean, are you sure this is the one? And, you know, at first you kind of think, well, what the heck? You know, we're to this point. At the end of the day, they're good questions. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody and really find out what the hard questions are. And can I answer them?
I know you guys talked about premarital counseling, and I know it's pretty common that people do before getting married. Have you guys done like after being married, like so then couples counseling together?
Yes, we did. We did. In fact, we were part of a marriage ministry that's called Re-Engage, and it was a biblical 13-week class, right? Yeah, 13-week class, and it was basically just your marriage is here, and are you happy with your marriage, or do you want your marriage to be better? So we went through the training for that. We went through the class, then we did training to become leaders in it, and went through that, and it was good. It was good for a couple different reasons. One, we saw people that came in with divorce papers in hand that went through a 13-week course and decided to put effort into their marriage. Okay? We moved away, so we don't have contact with them anymore. So what happened with them, I'm not really sure. But at least by going through the training and the counseling after the fact, you know, it certainly helped. I will tell you that, yes, we did have a huge struggle in our marriage. I will be dead honest with you. Marriage counseling costs a lot less than a divorce attorney. Because the divorce attorney is one price, but what it costs for everyone around you, particularly if you have kids, is going to last a lifetime. So spend the money on counseling. Spend the money on going out on a date every week.
Well,
You know?
And it kind of goes to the point that, in fact, our pastor coach for that ministry had a perfect joke to this, and it was a guy that went to a counselor, and they're talking because he's having troubles with his marriage, he doesn't know what to do, right? And so the counselor goes, okay, I want you to do something for the next 30 days before you file to get a divorce. I want you to do one thing for the next 30 days. After 30 days, if you still want to get a divorce, fine. And the guy goes, okay, what is it? He goes, I want you to go home and for the next 30 days, treat your wife like she is the best thing that ever happened to you. And he goes, okay. So he leaves. 30 days later, he comes back to his counselor, and the counselor goes, okay, so are you ready to get a divorce? And he goes, why would I ever want to do that? She's the best thing that ever happened to me. And it is a decision. Love does not just happen. It is very intentional. And so whether it is pre-engagement, premarital, but every chance you get as a married couple, you go on marriage retreats, you go to marriage conferences, you take every advantage to learn together about what that looks like. She went through, we talked about finances. She went through financial peace by herself the first time. Because I'm not a money guy, so I didn't think I needed to go to it. And she worked her tail off to try to get us on the right track, and I didn't buy into it. 4 years ago?
Yep.
4 years ago we went through it together. So much easier. So much better. And so don't miss out on those opportunities to do a lot of those types of things together. You may not think that it's worth the time, but it is. Yeah.
Initially, you guys discussed about your parents having a different perspective on you after you get a job and start earning money. So is that like a harsher point of view that they have, or is it? How is it?
Depends on the parents. I'm the last of 6 boys. I loved my parents. They're both passed now, and they loved me. There was no question to that. But by the time they got to me, it was like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And it was a whole different relationship because I had 5 older brothers that they'd already, done all of that, and I could learn from. So that, a lot of it depends on where you are in that line of how that transitions. She's the first. She was experimented on. So
leaving and moving out was a little more difficult because it was, where are you going to be living and what are you going to do? And luckily, my first apartment was the upstairs of a widow's house, and it was fully furnished. So she made me dinner and did my laundry. It was awesome.
But that's something you're going to have to navigate. And also for me, when I moved out of the house, there was also a whole bunch of furniture that my brothers had used and given back, or used and said, here, somebody else might want to use it. So my shopping for furniture was my mom and dad's attic. So yeah, it was pretty easy transition.
My degree was in accounting, so I never talked to my parents about money because I knew how to handle money. So we never had that conversation. That was a point of conflict, I will say, with my parents because they didn't understand some of the things.
Anybody that needs to leave, it's totally fine.
It's really okay. Yes, you're welcome. But so that was a point of conflict because they wanted to know more about my finances and how I was doing to make sure that I was doing okay. And I didn't. So I didn't share a lot with them about that. Just because I didn't.
Thank you guys so
You're
much.
welcome.
Have a good night.
You too.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Do you have any advice on how to make sure God is the center of your relationship? Are there things activities to do together, or just check in?
So Dave went to church, and that was one of the things that really did attract me to him, because most of the guys that I had dated up to that point did not. So he went to church, and he was really he was fully invested in God, which was something that I wasn't used to. So that was one thing that I really did appreciate, and as my relationship with the Lord developed, I realized that God had to be the center of my life, and He had to be the center of our marriage. And that takes both of you to work on. So looking for things like, is church important? You know, to the person that you want to date. Do they take devotion time? Do they go to church and fall asleep, or do they go to church and engage? Do they participate in small groups? You know, that type of thing. Are they
And
willing
being
to
in a small group together.
Yeah, being in a small group together. Are you willing to pray with each other? You know, when our marriage was struggling, one of the first things that we were told to do was to start praying together for each other.
In each other's arms.
So every morning we start our day, you know, we eat breakfast together and do a devotional, and then
And ask each other what's going on today.
Yep, and then we pray together, and then he pours my coffee, and I head out the door to work because he works from our home. So.
I mean, we are in each other's arms. And the first few times we did that was one of the weirdest things you have ever experienced.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
You're like, what? This is weird. Now it's,
Yeah.
wait a minute, we haven't prayed yet.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we get in a hurry about getting ready and doing things. Hang on a second.
But understanding that God has to be first and foremost in your life as an individual, but that God is also the center of your marriage, solves a lot of conflicts and makes things a lot clearer. For instance, Dave's parents both passed away, and he got a small inheritance. And we didn't know what to do with the money. You know, we were like, do we put it into savings? Do we pay off? You know, do we pay down the debt on the mortgage on the house? What are we going to do with this money? And so we said, let's take 2 weeks. We parked it in a savings account and said, let's take 2 weeks and pray individually about what it is we need to do with this money, and seek God for what it was. So we prayed individually about the situation and asked God to reveal what it was that we were supposed to do. And at the end of 2 weeks, we said, let's go out to lunch and we can talk about whatever it was that God revealed during prayer. And we did. And it was a reassurance because both of us, God had told both of us separately the same thing. So
I started my business.
So when we were talking about it, it just made sense. Now the decision we made didn't make any sense at all. We have a son in college, and my husband was the bigger breadwinner of the two of us.
Oh, and Laura was getting married.
And Laura was getting married. So, you know, we have some big expenses coming up. And now 60% of our household income is going to be gone. You know, the world would look at that and say, that was a poor decision. But God said, this is what you need to do. And guess what? We were able to pay for Laura's wedding. We have been able to pay for Mason's college. And we still have money in the bank. We are not homeless. And, you know, we have food in our cupboard. So I think we're doing okay.
I think the other thing you have to look at.
I have to leave. I have a pre-engagement meeting. Can the last person out press stop and just,
We'll leave it running, it'll just run out of battery and everything.
All right.
So.
Thank you, guys. You're welcome.
The other thing that I would tell you to look at, and I say this, everybody looks at Ephesians 5 and has been horribly mispreached and mistaught for a number of years. And I wish somebody would have walked through, at least with me, Ephesians 5, all of it. And the reason why, because more times than not, Ephesians 5 gets dealt with on the second half of it, which is, wives, submit to your husbands, which always gets everybody upset, and everybody quits listening right then and there, right? go to the first half of that. The first half of Ephesians 5 talks about each person's, her relationship to God and my relationship to God. What's the vertical first? Deal with your vertical relationship with God first. Then let's talk about the horizontal. Once we have the vertical taken care of, now we can deal with the horizontal. So between the two of us, puts the whole perspective of submission, because me as the man, everybody gets upset about the woman's part of it, submitting to the man, but my submission is to God. And my responsibility, if you really read all of it, is much greater than her submission to me. Because that's my job. As the husband, as the leader of my home. And I can tell you at one point in time, the first big part of our marriage, I was not a good leader of our home. And part of that was learning about Ephesians 5. All of it. So that I recommend that to anybody.
I think more about, you guys had mentioned some of the rules of fighting that you guys figure out. What are some more of those?
So staying on one topic, the second one is you can't be so angry that you can't even think straight. You have to be able to think clearly.
Be rational.
So being rational, and there's no name calling. Can't have any name calling of any kind, and you don't do it in front of your kids. So when you're first married, you don't have kids, you don't have to worry about it. But when kids come, you can't fight in front of your kids, because they have to have an assurance of knowing that mom and dad love each other and are there. You guys know all too well how scary the world is. We do not know half of what you guys know, and I don't really want to. But they need to have that assurance. So having that fight just between the two of you in a private space is the other thing. Because the minute you have it in public, there's a lot more damage that's done. Okay? So we talked about kids, but even if it's just your friends or your parents or one side of the family or the other, as soon as other people are involved, it's a whole nother thing, because now you're talking about possibly disrespecting your spouse in public, and that has a whole nother ramification to it, right? If you're fighting in front of one family or the other, those families are going to take one side or the other, and now you're not fighting fair, because now you have
A gang.
3 against 1 or 20 against 1. And when you leave that situation, the two of you might reconcile, but your family isn't going to know that. And so now, forever, they're going to hold it against your spouse. And that's not fair.
And also, even if you are fighting behind closed doors in your home with kids, you can't be yelling. They can't be hearing you yelling through the door either. I mean, it's all about stability for the kids. And that's not stability.
And then finally, you got to come to some type of resolution. And sometimes that resolution is agreeing to disagree. One fight we had, we traveled often because we live, he was from a different state, so we always constantly driving one family or the other.
That was our vacation for
Yes.
the longest time.
So when you fill up the car with gas, this was an argument. Laugh all you want, but it was when you're driving down the road and you've got 3 little kids in the car, it's dead of winter, and you're driving from one set of farmland to another set of farmland where there's not a gas station on every corner, this is a stressful point. My philosophy is that a car should be filled up as soon as it hits a quarter of a tank. So when you hit a quarter of a tank, you stop at the first gas station, you fill it up, and you drive until you get to a quarter of a tank. His philosophy is, let me check and see where the cheapest gas is between here and where I'm going.
And the mileage things do not help this at all.
And then, how many gallons, how much mileage, or how many miles can we go before we get to empty? Because that's right there on your dashboard. And he figures it all out because he does maps and all that I don't do that. So if we can make it 156 miles, and in 152 miles, we're gonna hit the north end of this city that has cheap gas, that's where we're gonna go get gas. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not rolling in on fumes, right?
The standard is,
So-
I'm not pushing.
So this was a fight we had, and we had it often because we traveled together. So we had to agree to disagree on when the perfect place was to fill the car with gas. So our agreement was whoever is driving decides when the car gets to get filled up with gas. So if I'm driving and it hits a quarter tank, we're stopping. And he's not gonna say anything about, he can look, there's 4 gas stations and he said that one has the cheapest one, I'll go to that one. But he can't say, well, let's go to the next exit. He can't say that.
We've already stopped.
By the same token, if he's driving, I can't keep looking and saying, we're close to empty, we're close
There's
to empty.
50, there's 50
There's
miles
only
left.
50 miles left, So we agreed to disagree on that point, and that's okay.
And I think that's an art that has been lost in today's culture. It's okay to agree to disagree on things. You don't have, I mean, we're all different. We don't have to agree on everything. We're not going to agree on everything. I love her dearly, but there's a lot of things I don't agree with her on. But that's okay.
The bigger things that were an argument, tithing. I said, tithing is in the Bible, we have to do it. And it's not that he didn't want to tithe. It was just kind of like, well, we're in this space right now where 10% seems like a lot. And I'm like, but it's a Bible mandate. And this was a faith point for me. Okay, this was a growth point for me in my faith. He trusted God for everything. I did not. So God had to break that part of me. So I said, let's tithe. Let's try tithing. The challenge was to tithe for 4 weeks. And so we can do this for 4 weeks.
And
I
she
said,
was doing the math.
yeah. So I was like, we'll try it for 4 weeks. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to what we were doing.
And you said, and God, when I prove I'm right, then we'll go back to the way it was.
Yes. And we've been tithing ever since. So that was before Rachel was born, and she's 25. If that gives you any kind of indication. But those are points that you do have to, that's a bigger topic, and you have to agree on that topic. Gas, not such a big deal.
And I think that in one of the things that she said, probably, I want you to think about very clearly, and something that I had to take it into account, but both of us have to take into account. In our faith walk, I trusted God. She didn't. This was a point of faith for her. And if I am going to do my job as leader of my home, I have to help her grow in her faith. And so we have to look at that aspect of it of, okay, how are we going to help build each other up in our faith, and what does that look like? And really thinking about and hearing what's being said, and not always being the words.
And understanding that at different times you're going to grow in different ways. He is not the man that I married 29 years ago. He's very different from the man that I married. By the same token, I am not the same woman that he married 29 years ago. Because we've both grown as individuals. We've grown in our faith, we've grown in our maturity, we've grown in experience. So that changes. So as we have grown as individuals, our marriage has to grow with it. And that growth is never at the same level. It's not like we both grow like this. It's, oh, I go here. Oh, he goes there. Oh, I go here. And then we're here for a little while. And then we backslide. And then we go, so. And different things change those. We moved, we changed jobs.
Many
We
times
had
over.
children. We had financial ups and downs along the way. We had illness,
family
Everything
issues.
that's in the marriage vows happens. So, sickness, health, love and cherish,
You said you wouldn't take me to
richer and
sickness.
poorer. I know, I did.
It's on the video. She told the pastor in our premarital counseling, she goes, I'm not taking him in sickness. So when he's doing the charge and he gets to sickness, it's on the video that she looks at him and she goes, no.
I keep it interesting.
Trust me, she takes care of me when I'm sick, so.
So on some of those, this is kind of like a nitpicky question, so feel free to ignore it if you want. On some of those things like getting gas, like folding laundry, it's easy to do it one way. Where do you find like you take one person's over the other, or you find a compromise in certain situations where like folding laundry, if you both fold the laundry differently for 30 years, obviously, like efficiently, it doesn't work as well. But like,
Okay, so folding towels.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
because we've had this.
We're doing this currently.
Yes, we're doing it currently. So in one house we lived in, folding towels in squares fit better in the cabinet. So towels had to be folded in squares because it was the only way that they would fit in the closet. Okay? I prefer the tri-fold thing, and so you fold it in half, and then you take that half and you fold it in half again, and then you fold it in thirds, so that it's like long, like a
Like a
blanket
tube,
roll,
yeah.
like a tube. And he didn't like to do that, but they stack better in the new closet, so that's why they're going that way. Loading the dishwasher. He loads the dishwasher very differently than I do. As long as the dishes get clean, I don't care how the dishwasher gets loaded.
And that's probably one of the biggest things you have to, I mean, when you look at the nitpicky things like that, are you worried about how it's done, or are you worried that it gets done? And there's a lot of times, you know what? If it gets done, who cares?
And if it's that important to one spouse or the other, do you love that person enough to give up on that point?
Yeah. What hill are you willing to die on? And you'll find that there's a lot of them are not. And if it's that important for one person to have their way in it, it just becomes their job. If this is that important, I'm going to let you take care of that. And that's okay too. But and understanding that too, even when it comes to fighting. Marriage has to come with a lot of grace. I mean, I am proof positive that she has to have a lot of grace. But understand something. You're going to get upset about things. And sometimes you're going to fight about them, and sometimes you're just going to get mad. And you'll be mad. And at some point in time, you have to decide: is this the hill I'm going to die on? Is this the battle I'm willing to fight? But also, and it's not just having that conflict between the two of you. If I'm going to be mad about something, is this something worth me being mad about? Or is it, you know what, this is not that big a deal, let it go.
And what's the root of it?
And yeah, why? Why am I mad?
Why is it so important to me that it has to be done this way? Because sometimes that's when you find out about, like the tithing, it really was a trust issue for me. And I was like, monetarily this doesn't work. But it was a trust issue. And it was something that I had to work out so that I would trust God. Now I do. And so now there's times when he's like, really? We're going to do this?
And it's not
But
even a
Brenda-
tithing issue, it's just faith on anything.
Right.
There's things that she's like, yeah, we're gonna go this direction. I'm like, are you sure about that?
So,
Okay.
but you have to analyze why is that important? And sometimes it is because that's the way you were raised. Sometimes it's, you know, some environmental factor. Sometimes it's a spiritual battle. But getting at the root of why is that so important for you to hold on to that one thing can tell you a lot about yourself or your spouse.
I think I know the last question. So for when you guys got engaged, how much of that was like a surprise? How much did you guys plan that together?
I had been planning to buy a ring for her. I was running a fertilizer plant, and if you know anything about agriculture, spring is nuts. I mean, you work, I mean, we were not open on Sundays, but we'd still put in 110, 120 hour weeks. And so it was January, February, and my boss and his wife, she had a lot of jewelry, so she knew about jewelry, and I cornered her and I said, hey, I need help. I don't know what to pick. I want to buy a ring, the whole bit. She's like, sure. But things started happening, so I didn't get it done. And it was the end of April, and the state of Michigan was changing their sales tax. And I had just moved into a house that I needed to get a lawnmower. And so I'm trying to figure things out. Really don't have a budget for it to begin with. And so, but I, need to buy a ring too. But things just happen. And I'm like, I'm just gonna wait till after spring's over, then I'll go to get a ring, we'll do it right. Well, one Saturday, we got rained out. Called her up, and I said, hey, I've got to go up to Grand Rapids. We were living in Michigan. I'm going to go to Grand Rapids. Got to pick up a few things. Want to go with me, and we'll go to dinner.
Shower curtain.
Shower curtain. Yeah, shower curtain for their new
For
house.
his new house.
And bath mats.
And a bath mat, yes.
So she's like, sure, I'll go. So I go get cleaned up, and we head up to, we go to the store, and I get the shower curtain, bath mats, a few odds and ends. And so we're driving down 28th Street, still very vivid. And she's thinking that, I'm driving down and all of a sudden it just hits me and I'm like, mall. She thinks, because, sales tax is changing, that we're going to Sears to buy a lawnmower. We walk into we stop at the main entrance, never go to the main entrance of the mall. But that night we did. Walk in, and we're at that main, and there's like 3 jewelry stores. And I look, and I'm like, no, not that one, that one's the one. And she's still wondering why we didn't drive to Sears. And we walk over to the jewelry store, and I said, go pick out the one you want. And she's like, what? And I said, pick out the diamond that you want. And to tell you how much God this was, not only did we pick out the ring, it fit. So she walked out with the ring on her hand.
So my side of that story
Which is why we laugh so hard at this.
was that we had been dating for a while, and I was growing in my faith with the Lord and realized that marriage was a gift. And we had a great relationship, and I really thought that things were progressing towards us getting married. But Christmas had gone by, New Year's had gone by, Valentine's Day had gone by, my birthday is in April, and it had gone by, and I was just like, you know, maybe this is just never going to go anywhere. And so that morning I said to God,
That Saturday morning.
you know, if this relationship is not going anywhere, if this is not the man that you want me to spend the rest of my life with, then just give me a sign of some kind. I said, maybe he calls me today and we go out tonight because we weren't supposed to go out that night because he was going to be working late. So, and I'm thinking, no way, not no rain in the forecast, you know, because I'm going to be smarter than God, see. So there's no way that anything's going to happen. So I was cleaning my apartment and everything, and the phone rings, and it's Dave, and he goes, "Hey, it started raining here, so we're gonna get off early, and I thought we could drive up to Grand Rapids tonight." Sure. So now I'm like, now I gotta break up with them. You know, like I gotta tell him it's over. So we're going to Grand Rapids, and we go into Target. He's like, "What do you think of the shower curtain, man? What do, you know, could you help me pick out some bath mats?" And I'm just sitting there the whole time thinking, how am I going to break up with him? How am I going to tell him that, like, it's over? How am I going to do this? And I thought, I'll tell him at dinner. You know, we'll be in a public place. I'll get him one last free dinner. Because, you know.
Well, she's going to get one last free dinner out of it.
It'll be all right. So we're driving to
That's the financial piece.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because it was all about the money for me. So we're driving, and he was like, "What do you want to do for dinner?" And I'm just sitting there like, I have no appetite. Like, I literally don't want to eat anything. So I was like, well, how about we go to Fridays? We can go get a good burger, you know, Fridays. It was relatively new then. So we're driving down the road, and I'm like, there's Fridays at the mall. So he turns in, which I was like, okay, so we're going to Fridays. And he was like, oh, wait a minute, I got to go pick up something. So I'm thinking, oh, a lawnmower, because I've been bugging him. I'm like, they're going to increase the sales tax on May 1st. You got to get
tomorrow.
a lawnmower.
That was tomorrow.
You got to get these big ticket items before the sales tax changes, because otherwise you're going to pay 2% more. And so I'm thinking, we're going to Sears to get a lawnmower because he's got to pick up something. He's finally listened to me about getting a lawnmower. Okay, I saved him some money. Now I'm going to break his heart, but I'll get a free dinner. Like, it'll be fine. And so he pulls in and he parks in the middle of the mall, and I'm thinking, what's he doing? Sears is all the way down, and I even said, Sears is all the way down at the other end. And you were like, yeah, I know. So we walk in the door, and there's a jewelry store right there. And I think, no. But he zooms past that first jewelry store, and I thought, nope, not gonna happen. Okay, whatever. Let's go find Sears and get your lawnmower and go get dinner and get it over with. So when he pulls me into the second jewelry store and says, pick out a ring, I was completely caught off guard. So we didn't really have a whole lot of conversation. There was conversation while we were dating about what would you want in a marriage? What would I want in a marriage? But never a talk about what do we want in a marriage. We never talked about the two of us getting married. We didn't date, we dated what, 14 months?
14 months.
Before we got married. We were also living. So.
Like I said, I was 27 years old, so. 28
yes.
by the time we got married.
So that's kind of the laughing part of that. I was going to break up with him the day that we got engaged.
If we had gone to dinner first,
We wouldn't be
we
here.
probably wouldn't be here.
So you weren't hungry.
So,
Did you get a lawnmower?
no.
No.
No, because there was, I mean,
Sales tax.
exactly. I ended up paying extra to pay sales tax, but you know.
Yes, it was worth it.
Well, you know.
You get the reach percent off.
That's right. What else?
What part of Virginia were you guys from?
we lived in Mechanicsville.
Northeast corner
Yeah,
of Richmond.
Okay. That spot. Have you heard of Newport News?
Yes.
I used to live there.
Okay. Yeah. Rachel's friend in high school went to Newport News to go to college.
Yeah. So,
You know where Hannah and Eric will be living? Or what, like,
they're in Fredericksburg. No,
No, they're in Richmond.
they're in Richmond.
They're in Richmond. I don't know what time.
I forget which subdivision or
Tyler said
suburb
the
they're
apartment
in.
that she had before the apartment she
Yeah.
has now, well, that she's getting rid of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they live in Richmond proper, and we were northeast
East.
of Richmond.
If you want, the interesting thing about Richmond is you can be really small town or you can be really big city. Just depends on which area you're in. I mean, if we had lived in Atlanta before that, so if we wanted flashbacks to Atlanta, you went to Short Pump, which is on the northwest corner, and it's just nuts. It's just stupid nuts.
Lots of traffic.
I mean, where we were, I mean, you go 2 miles and you're in farmland again. So,
There was somebody, actually I think it was Dennis. He's a younger guy from Calgary. He was from Virginia. I think he was from Richmond. I think he was the one, I can't remember.
I don't
It
remember.
was somebody else that was from
Well-
Richmond, and I was like, oh yeah, my sister talked about how much she
Oh my
loved
gosh,
it. She
they're
was like,
still
and
here.
he was like, really? Everybody I know hates it.
Oh, really?
Well, and the thing about it is, though, is that Richmond is the biggest little town you'll ever find. And either you fit in, either you've lived there all your life, or if you don't fit in, you won't fit in because you haven't lived there all your life. I mean, truly. So, it's an interesting dynamic. But just like everywhere else we've lived, we enjoyed it while we were there. Don't know that we'd move back. So,
How many other places have you guys?
well, if you count the one day that we lived in Michigan, married, then we moved to Indiana, 2 places in Indiana. No, 3 places in Indiana. And then
Minnesota.
Minnesota, Georgia, Virginia, and then back to Indiana. So, yeah, we lived about 25 miles southwest of Minneapolis for 6 years, 4 years on the northeast corner of Atlanta, and then Virginia for 4 years. So, and then here, which is kind of odd because both of us pretty much lived where we grew up all of our lives, and then since we've been married, we haven't lived more than 6 years anywhere. So there you go.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody hit the stop button.
Thank you guys.
And
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That's very important.